Hey, friends, I wanted to take a moment to let you know that the doors are open for the Faithfully Growing Community Annual Pass, but only until Tuesday, December 3rd. And I'm so grateful to have met some of you who've already joined, and I love seeing how this community is growing. I know marketing can feel overwhelming. Trust me, I feel it too. But I want to make sure you know about this if it feels like the right fit for you right now. The pass includes weekly drop ins, meditations, journaling prompts, monthly workshops, one coming up on Friday, as well as expert talks like you're going to hear in this special episode, and so much more to support your part's work. Doors won't be open again until at least late February, so check it out at faithfullygrowing.com/, annual pass if you're interested. And I'll also put that link in the show notes. Welcome back to IFS Meditations and Insights. I'm Tim Fortescue, your guide on this journey, here to help foster spiritual wholeness and healing through an internal family systems lens. In this compassionate space, we aim to dive into self-discovery and inner knowledge. I truly believe that when we accept all parts of ourselves, we're able to experience divine love and to live more fully. I'm thankful to be a part of your path to inner peace and sacred connection. So settle in, open up your heart and mind, and let's begin another episode. Recently, I participated in a live webinar and Q&A with 4 other IFS podcasters: David Politi, whose podcast is Empowered Through Compassion; John Clark from the Going Inside podcast; Tammy Salenberger from the One Inside podcast; and Natalie Deering from the Wellness podcast. And I'm excited to share this with you in this special episode. And so I hope you enjoy it.
Welcome, everybody. It's so nice to have you here. I'm really excited. We got some wonderful podcasters with us today, and I have a story here I wanted to share. I wanted to take us back to 2019, and there's this wonderful marriage family therapist. She's the author of The One Inside, and she said, "You know what? I'm going to do a podcast." And on April 2019, she kicked off The One Inside, an internal family systems podcast. And now we're 170 episodes later. For 2 years, Tim Fortescue, he said, "You know what? I need some way to re-engage socially after the pandemic." And so he did his first one, and he provided us with many great meditations over the years, and he's hitting over 140 episodes. So I was thinking about this last night, but just with those 2 podcasts, we're now, if my math is correct, over 310 episodes. And then, all right, we fast forward to 2023, 2 podcasts came out that year. Natalie Deering started That Wellness podcast with Natalie Deering, Internal Family Systems with a Twist. And then 1 month later, had Tammy on her podcast. And then in November, I started Empowered Through Compassion. And 3 months later, had Tammy as a guest. And then in February 2024, John Clark published his second podcast show. So he already had a successful one, said, "You know what? I'm going to dive into IFS." And he started Going Inside, Healing Trauma from the Inside Out, and had Christine Dixon as his first guest. And Christine shared her love for the model as well as for the Enneagram. So kind of trace that right back to Tammy as well. I feel like we are all connected, all of us. And what was amazing to me was when you take all of our podcasts, put them all together, we have nearly almost 500 episodes. That's a lot of guests and a lot of people listening to us. So, my other shout out that I want to do is for all the people here who are listening, who have been listening to our podcasts. You know, we are all really, really grateful for you, and we feel you that, you know, when we're talking to somebody, we could sense like, all right, there's a listener here that's listening into what we're saying. And that really means a lot. So thank you for being here. We definitely want to have interaction today in this live stream with you. Um, we have some fun things to speak about coming up. All right, so let's begin my agenda here. So what I'd like to do first is to get into the mood of this conversation and have a really amazing conversation, is to do a meditation. And so who else that do this but our very own Tim, master of meditation. What I want to do, I just want to offer to everybody out there. Um, this is an invitation to begin. We a lot of times we begin IFS classes with a meditation. So don't feel like you have to do this. I think this is more an offering to you. If you want to take out a piece of paper and write or draw or do whatever you want as you're listening to Tim, and if you want to really go through all of it, it's really, you know, more just we invite you if it feels right for your body. And with that, Tim, I'm going to turn over the mic to you for meditation.
All right. Well, thanks, David. Yeah, let's just pause for a bit. I mean, often I have clients and others that are surprised, like I feel a tightness in my chest right now. I have our parts are there and we interacting with them and knowing they're beautiful, doing the best they can is what this is about. And so let's just pause for just a few minutes and settle in. Notice your internal world, those parts, thoughts, feelings, actions, impulses, beliefs. If it's coming up in your mind, it's likely a part. Just notice those parts. Internal family just gathering around, whatever works best for you. Some may want to be close, some may want to keep their distance, be a little less trustful, and they're all welcome. And then as you're noticing the parts, just see if there's one that may be able to use a little attention right now, or maybe it's a group of parts, or maybe you're curious and want to pick a part. See how that works. Just allow a part to have some attention. And let those that are gathered around, and some may come in late, and let them know they can witness too, and that they can all have a chance in the future at another time. But we can get to know our parts better if we spend some individual time with each one. And we're going to work with this part, or spend some time with this part that's here right now today. Just thank them for their willingness to soften back and witness. Then turn back toward the part that you're going to give some attention today. How's it doing with that attention? Does it have anything to share? Check in and see how you're feeling toward it. And how do you know that it's present? Maybe it's a tightness in the chest, like I often feel with my parts that may have some anxiety. Just notice that part and then, yeah, see how you're feeling toward it. And if it's something that is other than the lines of curiosity, compassion, it's likely another part. Just see if that part could give some space, knowing that it can have a chance in the future now. But for now, we're going to get to know this part that's here. So tune back in to the part you're giving attention to and see if you can extend it just a drop of curiosity or compassion. Just let it know that you're here. And it may be a little hesitant because it may have been a while. We're just going to ask a couple questions and be curious, and then we'll wrap up. But check in and see if the part knows who you are. How old's the part? Often our parts are younger and they're surprised that we're who we are today, and they don't have to buy into all of it. It's just maybe the beginning of building some trust. Yeah, and just be and notice. Does this part have an intention for you or a job? If it gives you some insight into that, it's likely an indicator of that younger, more vulnerable part that we call exiles that it may be protecting. And we're not going to go there today, but let it know that there's hope, there's healing. It's not alone. And let this part know that has your attention now that we're about to wrap up, but see if there's anything else. And thank it for its courage, for as much or as little as it shared. It's doing the best that it can, and you need it, but it's got a team here. Thank it for its courage and see if it could just soften back into those parts that are witnessing. Just look around at each part. Send them some gratitude for their courage. You know, my part that gets some tightness just really wants me to look my best. It's feeling softer now, and just thanking it for all that it does for me. And just, yeah, send some gratitude and thanks for all of your parts for their courage to soften back and witness. And remind them that they can have some of your time too in the future. Maybe let them know when. And then when it feels right, you can just bring your attention back to the present moment where you are. You can open your eyes if they were closed. And we'll continue with our time here. But thanks so much for your trust and courage.
Thank you, Tim. That lovely meditation. Um, all right. This is what I think would be really cool for this time here. I want to open up to questions where people could write in any questions they have to us. And before we get to them, so feel free, throughout this discussion, if you have something that you feel would be helpful, write it in. And before I actually look at that, I have one question for all of us. And I was thinking we could go around, we could answer it, and have a discussion from that. My question is, we just saw a meditation on IFS. And IFS is something all of us love and talk about and dive into on our podcasts. So I'm wondering, what are the gold nuggets for you with IFS? What do you find are those gold nuggets that you take in, you use in your life, you share with others? And I think maybe we should start, I'll start with Tammy, to see how you've been impacted and what are those gold nuggets for you.
Hi, thanks, David, and thanks, Tim. Um, I'm gonna share just what came up for me during that meditation because that was really powerful and I think is a golden nugget. So, just the idea of unblending, because what I was experiencing is I was experiencing something, but I didn't really know what it was until Tim led us in this meditation. And then I was able to really separate out all the different parts I was feeling. And then once I did that, I realized this part over here is actually the one that needed the most attention from me and it was causing me the most concern. And my whole system, my whole body relaxed and softened. My face softened, my whole body softened. I have a little bit of a headache that went away by just this peeling of the onion, the unblending, just by that meditation helped me to, oh, I didn't even realize this part was here. I didn't realize this part was upset about something. Oh, okay. Well, that makes a lot of sense. And okay, I can turn towards it with curiosity and compassion. And then it just has this huge impact, right? Just from that, what was that, 5 minutes of just this? Oh, okay. Didn't even know that was happening. So I think that's probably a common golden nugget. I know there's a trainer that says we just sort of go to work and unblend all day. And I feel that way. I do that with my clients. And sometimes when I sort of get lost and like, what F am I doing? What F am I doing? It's like, oh, actually, I'm just unblending, right? I'm just helping them unblend. And as I am unblending from my parts, right? I'm unblending all day long. I am unblending and aware parts, and I'm helping my clients unblend. So, Tim, thank you for that. It was really helpful for me personally. So, thanks.
I want to just comment on that for a minute, but thank you, Tammy, for saying that. I feel like I was all excited to go to IFIO. And then when I went, basically they're like, all right, this is the heart of IFIO. I'm like, what? What is this the secret? And IFIO is IFS plus couples work. So it's a way to combine the two of them. And guess what the magic secret was for that? It's all about unblending. And I'm like, oh man, this is the heart of everything. And how I understand it is, a lot of models do things, and maybe in DBT they would call it emotional regulation. But it really is this like process where I think IFS is conceived in this beautiful way. And it's like calming ourselves and allowing all of us to feel, all of the parts inside of us to feel really heard and seen and not have to be agitated.
Yeah. Yeah. I would just add what IFS, and we know this, what IFS brings that DBT doesn't bring is that wise mind actually is self. And if wise mind and DBT can connect to the parts that are dysregulated, like how much more healing happens if there was a relationship between wise mind and emotional regulation, right? Like there's a relationship there that IFS that's what we're bringing to the table at DBT, I think is missing. I can say that.
Yeah. That's beautiful. All right, I'm going to turn to somebody else, or if anybody else wants to. I'm thinking like, John, what do you think about all of this?
Yeah, Tim, thank you for the meditation. I guess what I would say with David's question, the thing I am most wrapped up in right now in IFS is self, and this idea that for people who are hurting and looking for healing, IFS offers this opportunity what if there was no more frantic searching for a person, an expert, answers, tips, some new technique that might finally fix me. IFS offers that number one, you don't need fixing after all. And what if everything you needed was actually inside? And our role as practitioners is helping people access what's already there. What a relief for practitioners to not have to be this person with answers or sage wisdom or tips, or having to be the attachment figure for 17 clients a week or whatever it might be. All of these old ways of working for me as a therapist for 15 years eventually led me to hitting a brick wall and burning out completely, having to be that person for 17 people a week. And so IFS offered me a new way of approaching healing, a new way of walking through the world and seeing people as parts, and that their core is actually self and good and pure. And the last thing I'll say is an invitation for everyone here is self or self energy is literally whatever you perceive it to be. And so I see a lot of what IFS has brought to us is a very well built set of ideas and a model, a very whole model, but also a starting point for um, for the work to continue and the ideas to continue. So whatever you perceive self or self energy to be is your definition and experience of it, and you should honor that and work with that and foster that. There's no wrong way to get there to access this. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thanks, David.
It's beautiful. And I'll say too that I think that self energy is such this beautiful thing inside of us where in your podcast, you've been doing some work now where you're actually showing some of the work that you're doing with other people. And, there's disclaimers like don't just watch this and do it yourself, but it gives us a real chance to observe it, to sit in it, to feel it. And one thing I love, you took my answer, so I won't answer the question, but I was thinking self energy too, but from the angle of when you're in self energy, it inspires self energy from somebody else. And self energy begets self energy, parts beget parts. And so it's just, I've been playing around a lot with just how we don't really need to do anything except really know ourselves enough to sit in that self energy, to allow that self energy to come out of whoever we're sitting with. So thank you. All right, Natalie, what is your golden nugget? Golden nugget.
Yeah. So I'm excited to be here. Number one, thank you to David and Tim for the meditation, and Tammy and John and everyone here. It's exciting to be here. So yesterday evening, I was looking at that question of what are the golden nuggets or golden nugget. And I started just writing. And the first one that I wrote on this list, and I'm only going to share this first one, is gratitude. And I was kind of sitting with that, and I was like, parts of me were like, meh, I don't think I'm going to share that one. It doesn't really seem, there were parts judging that. But as I've been sitting here, that's just kind of been marinating for me. And I'm like, no, it's true. Like gratitude is something that I really feel is a golden nugget when it comes to parts work and self energy access. I'm really big on doing a gratitude practice at night before I go to bed. That's something I've been doing for years. And as I started to understand parts work in IFS, I really just started to understand what gratitude is doing, in my opinion, which is I feel like it's helping us unblend and access self-energy so that, when I am reflecting on my day, and I use the GLAD practice, GLAD. So I name like one thing that I'm grateful for that day, one thing that I learned, one thing that I accomplished, and one delight that I felt from that day. And as I do that every night, I can just like feel my system within getting space, shifting, being able to feel like I'm able to access self-energy in a way that then I'm able to bring awareness to maybe if there are parts present from the day that were activated with concerns or whatever it might be. And gratitude, I feel like it's so powerful in shifting us into accessing more of that self-energy within us. So gratitude is mine.
It's really beautiful. I don't know if this is connected or not, but you talking about gratitude made me feel inside like just how grateful I am and just how much I love being here in this moment right now with you guys. But that's really powerful. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, Tim, what is your gold nugget?
Well, I was just thinking, it came to mind the Inside Out 2 movie that can drive a practitioner crazy. I need to go back and watch it and to enjoy it. But the idea of self and what was beautiful in that movie for me, I feel like we're always looking for self, or like and the beauty of that movie was, I mean, the self is in the parts and vice versa. But when they were all just like hugging it or something. And so when they came out of those extreme roles to more a balanced part, and the self wasn't whatever this thing that was thrown back in the movie, but the self was just the realization, like, here we are at our best and just offering so much compassion, and the parts just bonding together around that object, crying. And I'm like, wow, that's a beautiful example. We're always looking for self, but it's chaotic. And just having that conversation with our parts, it keeps them aware that they're on a team. But sometimes if we stop looking so hard and just feel and accept, there are parts of me that still doubt that it's going to come together or work out and don't trust that. But it's kind of where the gold nugget is for me.
All right, so this is what I have to say to you, Tim. Oh, no, you didn't. Oh, no. Oh, no. Now you brought up Inside Out too. Tammy said something that was just really powerful, I have to watch the movie again, but about how when they did like hug it out and that self was so present, there was like little there was like little like glitter or something in that scene. And I got to go back to Natalie on this one. I feel like, and this is a new, thinking on my part, but it's almost like that movie helps us remember that all the parts have self energy inside of them. And the moment they're able to appreciate one another, they're drawn together and there is self energy. All right, so I'm going to just ask questions, or if anybody wants to jump in, anybody wants to say anything, feel free. But no, I love all of your nuggets, gold nuggets. See, this is for the audience, the stuff that I'd edit out when I'm like, but Natalie, I want to turn to you. If you want, no pressure.
Yeah.
I'm curious what the others on the list was.
Oh, so I'm not going to read all of them because I had a list of 12. But the other one that I did really resonate with that stood out to me was using external resourcing in order to connect with self-energy access and parts, which I think is important because I know there's debate in the IFS community about external resourcing. But in my opinion, I feel like if we can utilize things like breathing and meditation, the use of our senses, connection with nature, pets, other people, that those are things that can be a guide in terms of helping us feel more access to self-energy, which I think is an important thing to keep in mind and to have awareness of in terms of what are your resources in your life for self energy and parts connection and awareness.
Oh no, you didn't. You're saying that. Oh no, you did. I love this. All right, so I'm going to go back to Tammy here, who just published or republished her episode with Joanne Twombly, who you and I love. You know, she's the rebel, right?
She's
But
amazing.
that
Yeah.
she is so amazing. And
Yeah.
so, but she would say that she would say like she would probably say to you like,
Mhm.
Natalie, absolutely. You know,
Yeah.
resource doesn't have to be this dirty word in IFS circles, that we could totally appreciate the necessity of resourcing, which EMDR does, and still value and everything that the parts have to say. Resourcing doesn't have to railroad over parts. And the way that you put it, I think exactly kind of exemplifies what Joanne is saying in that.
Well, I think
Yeah,
we
I
just,
agree.
sorry, Natalie.
No, go ahead. Yeah, because I've interviewed Joanne, and it's definitely something that that was a big takeaway for me as well. But yeah, Tammy, I'd love to hear your thoughts too.
I think we just think of it practically, right? If we just sort of what happens to all of us in our lives, right? Like if I go for a walk, I might have lots of chatter, but then eventually I'm in the woods, I'm smelling the air. My parts can still be there, but there is some softening that happens. I mean, maybe it takes an hour, but something does happen when I'm in the woods or when I'm on my paddleboard, or like there are places I know I can be that my parts will settle down, they will soften back, and that there is just more of me there, right? There's just more of me. So think about that just sort of practically. Where do people just feel more of you? Where do you feel more of you? And it's okay to practice being in those places. That's not pushing away parts. It's really just sort of like, here's a place I can feel more of me.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. And that's how I've been really looking at all of that, right? It's that it is noticing though, right? If a part is trying to push away other parts in the use of maybe some of those things, and to bring awareness to that and to get to know that. But yeah, I feel like we can utilize those things like walks and nature and all of these things that are there as ways to help us have more access to self energy, to then be able to turn towards the parts with more of that curiosity, openness.
So interesting what you're saying, because maybe I'm being a little bit extreme here, but I feel like when we look at things, anything could be weaponized, you know, and even like something like resourcing. Yeah, a part could weaponize it against another part, and that's not okay. But if we're using it and giving permission, like I think that's a key, right? Like somebody was helping me see this earlier today, but like when you do a meditation, allowing somebody to see, like, you know what? Here's a suggestion, here's an invitation. I'm not saying close your eyes, breathe deeply, do this, do that. It's more like if you want to, if it feels right for you, I'm giving you some space, and you could look at your own self and say, is this what I would choose to do? And if so, then great. And if not, that's great too. And I think when we're talking with our parts, it's that same kind of energy as like, let's find resourcing and then offer that to parts and see how they take to it.
Mm-hmm.
Right. It's sort of like a manager driven, right? Because I had a manager driven diet or exercise, but the truth of the matter is, if I have manager driven walk, let's say, right, I have to get 3 miles in or whatever, then I'm not going to have more of me. I'm not going to have the spaciousness. Like that's not going to happen in the same
Or even if
way.
I said to you, Tammy, you got to go for a walk and feel calm,
Right.
right?
Right. I mean, we've all been there, right? We've all been like at the beach or at the sunrise or walk the mountaintop or whatever that is, or in your favorite place. And there's so much chatter happening, or there's so much pain in your body that you can't experience it. And then you have another part that's mad that you can't be there. So now you've got a couple different parts. So I think resourcing is helpful, and parts will show up when they need to show up, and we can be grateful to them because they're showing up for a reason. So if I'm at my favorite beach, I'm doing my favorite thing, and my parts are active, and there's not enough of me, or there's not a lot of me there, there's a reason. And so I can turn towards them and find out, like, sort of have some gratitude of like, what's going on? What, what do they need to say? So I think it works. I think it works for both.
Yeah,
Can I chime in on something, David,
of course.
too? And I know for me, too, I mean, there's some communities, particularly, there are parts of me that hate that I found IFS and I became more grounded in my faith, belovedness. This is not some sermon. I did go to seminary, but that's not where we're going there. But people say, oh, you're going to go down the slippery slope if you get untethered from whatever you're supposed to be tethered to. And I have found that as we kind of soften, like what I was saying about that movie, just kind of soften and let it happen, there's a grounding. And it helps me to welcome all and to be grounded in who I am. But I was miserable worrying about staying tethered. And if I can when I get untethered, I find there's still a grounding, and it's both and there. And that's been beautiful.
I love what you're saying. And I wonder if, because you said there's like people or other forces that are saying, oh, you're going to lose yourself if you're untethered. Um, I wonder if it makes sense. Could you kind of get a sense of what it was that you were tethered to? Because I would imagine the people that are invested in whatever that was probably
Yeah.
are like the ones that are very fearful of you becoming untethered and becoming true to yourself.
Right. And that is a whole other story. But yeah, I guess I'm tethered to an angry God. And these people are doing the best they can too. Like that's another thing is I've softened to the world, and like we're all doing the best that we can, and there's no judgment. And I've had great connections with people who are tethered, or like fear of getting untethered, and they're saying, wow, but I come from an evangelical background. I don't know what I am anymore, but I'm happy. But people from like an evangelical background saying, you know what, I have got 7-year-olds inside of me that are just as quote unquote lost, and hope maybe some of our viewers are resonating with this. Some don't be turned off. Email me, ask me questions. We're all welcome. But to hear people that have been working so hard to fix them, who are often a lot better off than I am, if they can turn it in, they're like, wow, I've got those little ones inside of me that are just searching for something and belonging, and they're finding it.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? I'm sorry. I hope I didn't open up a weird can of worms there.
No, what you're opening up, and I'd love to hear others. For me, it's just parenting, right? You're kind of opening that door to parenting and what that's like, and kind of how do you parent a little child or even a teenager without really being aware of what's inside of yourself.
I hear it as just this recognition that we have this new worldview of knowing that we have parts and other people have parts. And so we can make it as good and bad, right? I'm good, they're bad, I'm good, right? We can do that pretty easily, and that feels really comfortable to us. But when we know, oh, I have all these parts and you do too, then that changes everything, right? Like that, so if you want, David, we could talk about sort of podcasting, right? Like we all have parts that want to podcast, and we have parts that don't, right? Just like anybody that has parts that want to do projects or want to do, sort of write a book or do whatever they want to do, start a new business or start a thing. Like we all are going to have parts that want to do that, and we have parts that don't. And so I think that, every season, like I'm just about to start season 6. And so every season it sort of parts, and I think we all have these in common, parts that want to and parts that don't. And I think that that's something that's true for us. It's true for our listeners, that we have these different parts, that want to do something and parts that don't.
Mm-hmm.
That's really
I can
fair.
speak to that, David.
Yes.
Tammy already knows all about my parts that had involvement in starting or not starting my podcast this time around, and this idea of being seen. As you mentioned, David, for a long time, I've had another podcast helping therapists with the business side of things. And then when IFS changed my life, I thought I had parts that really wanted to amplify this message that IFS offers and the paradigm shift and all these incredible offerings from IFS, and then parts that were scared and freaked out, and parts that did want to prove something or be seen as smart and capable. That was what felt like a long and slow negotiation with those parts. And it's the first few episodes I did were even a negotiation with guests when I had parts that were very activated and wanted to prove that I'm smart or know a lot or could be a good host or want to talk about, oh yeah, I'm not new to podcasting. It's important. There's a part that wants you to know I'm not new to this, right? It's like, it was a lot for me to manage at first and doing that dance with my parts in having a platform again. That being said, it's been therapeutic for me, especially in this kind of community, because of the self energy, because of how de-shaming it is just to name parts like I'm kind of doing right now. What I was looking for eventually, and then working with Tammy with my parts, is like, what does a yes feel like? And what does a yes from self feel like? As a trauma therapist, I'm really interested lately on reconnecting people to their intuition, because something that happens in trauma is a temporary loss of agency. That's my current working definition of trauma, but also a disconnection from our intuition, right? Especially when there's a part that says, you should have known better, you should have avoided this, you should have seen the warning signs. Why didn't you, right? Why did you trust someone? I'm also really interested in somatic work these days and somatic IFS. Something that people could do right now as an experiment is look on your desk and see if you have something to drink or something to eat, and just take a look and gaze very kind of just lightly at it and ask yourself, do I want to eat or drink this thing? So for me, it's a half finished cup of coffee. And then you can just wait until you get a yes or a no. And it might come from your head. For me, it comes deep in my gut, kind of below my belly button. And I can just kind of wait until I get an answer either way. Now, what also becomes tricky is, how do we tell the difference between fear, or a part that is just afraid and seeing threats everywhere, and a part that is going, I'm actually trying to help warn you of something, right? My intuition trying to warn me of something going wrong, or of experiencing a threat again. But look for little things in your life that feel like a yes or no. Think if a friend called you right now and said, David, do you want to go out tonight and go bowling and get drinks or watch a movie or whatever? And see what it feels like somatically to have a yes, a strong, clear yes, a strong, clear no, or maybe a confusing maybe. And in that maybe, you might go toward your parts or invite parts that want to go out, parts that say absolutely not.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's interesting to think about. A little piece of me, this is just a joke, but I was thinking, like, when you said that, how many people that were listening to us and watching us, like, actually took a drink of water. But 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 yeah, no, I think we're also talking about polarities, perhaps, right? Or different parts that want different things and pull us. And I know for me, like, I have a lot of clients that are almost stuck in that world of like, do I do this? Do I do that? And how do I know that authentic yes, that authentic no? And perhaps a part inside is really trying to hear that and maybe getting frustrated that it feels a little bit nebulous to really hear, like, what is it that I really want?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Thank you, John, for sharing that, because I really resonate with that in terms of my journey to starting the podcast as well. It took me about a year, from the time that I had the I had the thought and then to actually doing it. It was probably over a year. And it took me doing a lot of therapy and parts exploration uh in terms of getting to know David, like you're saying, like the polarizations within of, a part of me that was like, yes, let's do it all now. And then another part that was like, no, let's not, because that's really scary and we could be criticized and judged and, ultimately felt not good enough and unworthy. And so it was this back and forth, back and forth. And it was by bringing awareness to that instead of either getting blended with either side, really hearing them all out and then making that kind of, that intuitive or that self-led, I feel like, decision, within me I felt like I knew when it was time to do it. But it definitely was a journey. It was a journey of exploration within, for sure. So I really resonate with that.
Yeah, I love what John said too. I thought it was brilliant. And I think what I'm hearing too, yeah, you can see the polarizations, but really is about connecting to ourselves, which is that thing that we lose in trauma, the thing that we all sort of have forgotten who we are. And so that's what it comes down to, is sort of like, what does it feel like to have more of me here? Like, to have more of me here, walking around, living my life feels very different than all the parts that live my life. And I love my parts and they're amazing and they have given me a good life. But what is it like for me to have more of me here? And I think that's what I'm hearing John kind of invite us to, is to notice that, to notice those cues of self energy, to notice those yeses, and to be more connected to our bodies, because our bodies are going to help us be more connected to self energy. So I think that was beautiful.
Yeah, and what are your thoughts?
Yeah, we'll definitely feel the parts. And my journey, so I've only been at this 4 or 5 years, and I got into trainings and I'm level 2 trained, and not that everyone needs that, but I just make a point. It's been 5 years and I've covered a lot of ground, and it's kind of a mystery of how that works. And I know that makes some therapists sick that hear what I just said and you're enough and it's going to happen. But I started my podcast before I found IFS, and it was called Faithfully Growing with Tim Fortescue. This website was like $1.99 on GoDaddy, and I'm grateful that that's the branding now. It's coming together, but I had no idea. And like 2 people would watch each episode. I'd be sitting in my garage. We lived in California then, in my bathrobe, with nothing professional, and then I found IFS. I put IFS Insights and Meditations in the title. And I started getting more intentional about doing just a little insight one week, a meditation the next week, and boom, it has taken off. And so being consistent and just letting it evolve. And I know I've been saying that a lot, and sometimes it doesn't evolve in the way that I want to, but just sticking with it but sometimes I'm amazed that I'm even on this panel. There's a part of me that says that and wants to criticize, but there's another, like, I belong here. I am good enough. I do matter. And I don't mean that arrogantly. There's the other part that's saying, oh, you're tooting your own horn or whatever you want to call it. But those parts are coming in constantly. But at my core, I belong. I've got something to offer, and I'm grateful for the courage to get it out there. And I'm grateful for my parts on all sides that bring that gift of who I am at my center. And so, yeah.
That's so great. Got a love from the audience. So I'm wondering, I know we have just a little more time. I wonder if there's time for this. And Tammy, taking what you said, which was beautiful direction of, podcasting and the different parts that came up, and then kind of hearing our own voice. I'm wondering for all of you, because I feel this kind of resonating, that with your podcast, there was some parts of you or some parts of self that was thinking about the future of IFS, the future that you want to see in IFS, and kind of wanting to bring something to others. That makes sense. And I'm curious, how that hits you guys, if, where kind of how you see yourself continuing in this beautiful place of understanding IFS, using it for yourself, and then bringing it out to others. What does that bring up inside?
I can just say that why it's important to me and why I have urgency around getting this message out is that it feels that now more than ever, we need to connect to our spirituality. And I don't know exactly how or when or why we got so disconnected from it. For some people, religion, spirituality just means religion. For some people, like myself, we had really hard experiences with religion growing up, and IFS offers in part an opportunity to reconnect to your spirituality, especially in this idea of what is self, or your soul or the God image inside of you, accessing your heart energy, whatever it might be. That's an opportunity to reconnect with your spirituality, especially if you're healing from trauma. It's an essential part of healing from trauma, because trauma is, in a way, a spiritual experience. The healing also has to be a spiritual experience. So that's the invitation that I feel is there.
Yeah. Thank you. I feel like I'm looking at the time and I'm so wanting to continue talking with all of you. So I want to, first of all, thank you, the panel, the audience. Well, I'm so grateful and happy for everybody here. Thank you for being a part of this. And I really appreciate you being here in the audience and you on the panel. Is there any final words, thoughts, messages that anybody here would like to give to people?
Just thank you so much for attending. I really appreciate you dedicating your time over this past hour. And thank you for listening to our podcasts and, allowing us to be a part of your lives too. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no, this was really special for me to have you guys here. And I admire each and every one of you. And this was really cool. I said to people here on the panel, why don't we just do this and just have fun? And they all were. And again, if you would like to do it again, I'm game. I'm game to do something like this again. And we'll see what the responses are like from the audience. But thank you.
Thanks, David. I appreciate it.
Of course, thank you, Tammy.
Yeah, thank you,
for
David.
all that you guys are doing. All right, well, see you guys soon. Audience, thank you for being here. And we'll say goodbye.
Bye.
That wraps up another episode of IFS Meditations and Insights. If you found it useful, please follow or subscribe and share. Leave a positive review to help others find the podcast. For more IFS Meditations and Insights, visit blog.faithfullygrowing.com. As always, your thoughts on the podcast are welcome. Send me an email to tim@faithfullygrowing.com. Thank you for being part of this community. Remember to be compassionate to yourself and others, and I look forward to our next session. Until then, take care, stay curious, and embrace all parts of your journey. And know that those parts that may be a little hesitant to being embraced are doing the best that they can to.